Welcome back to your weekly dose of Celtic chat here on Celts Are Here. It's our weekly bulletin. Double trouble again. Declan and Quinny on a Thursday. The World Cup's coming to an end, which means, of course, Quinny, domestic football's returning. We were just saying there as we were coming on, it's nice to have one of these, and you're actually looking forward towards a game. That game being Aberdeen versus Celtic at Pittodrie on Saturday.
Yeah, and it feels like, like when we're coming into the international break, it felt like, oh, this is going to take forever to get through. And then before you know it, boom, we're here. And, not only, Aberdeen, but the fixtures come quick and fast, really, so it's, snap your fingers and here we are. And, a wee bit of World Cup still to get out of the way with a wee bit of Celtic interest in the games, of course. And yeah, Aberdeen, and again, like it's a wee bit kind of deja vu because Aberdeen was the very first game we played this season as well.
That's right. Yep.
So it's like a real kind of fitting, like second half of the season. Let's go for it again.
Yep, that's actually something I've not thought about with that. But of course, we kicked off the league campaign with that 2-0 victory against them. Stephen Welsh playing at centre back that day, and obviously Jota, he scored Stephen Welsh, and Jota scored that stunning goal. So yeah, it's actually something that I've not thought about. I was actually having a wee look back at Aberdeen's fixtures so far this season. It's something I want to come on to because they've been pretty decent at home so far this season. But you've touched on it there, Quinny. There's still some World Cup football left. That does still involve a Celtic fullback. Let's go to the other night up against Messi and Co. It was always going to be a tough game. Croatia were written off, I think even in the group from the start that they get past that. They knock tournament favourites Brazil out on penalties. They're up against, the team who I think now it's really written in the stars for them to go and win the World Cup. The team that I backed at the start of this, I put, we accumulator on them, put a few quid on Argentina. I was asked the other week when I was on Go Radio who I thought was going to win it, and just from then having watched a good amount of games at World Cup, I said Brazil just due to their strength and depth, which I think a lot of people would say. I don't think that was
Brazil.
That was not a Chris Boyd comment of the sorts or anything. I think that was a fairly decent comment to make, wasn't it? But now, I wanted Argentina to do it. I hope they do it. We know they're going to play France in the final after they defeated Morocco last night 2-0. But it was a tough game for Juranovic the other night, and I don't think you can take his performance in isolation. I just think as a whole team, Croatia, they just went at it and they were up against a real quality football side. And again, I know there's been a bit of debate, pundits, and I personally, I think it's a penalty. I don't know what your thoughts on it is, Quinny, but I think that probably does turn the game for Croatia because of a team who does that thing that Graham Souness talks about a lot. I don't listen to him too often because at times he can come away with some nonsense, but one thing he always goes on about is teams keeping a clean sheet in the game for as long as possible gives them a good chance. Croatia like to do that. The other night when you concede a penalty, you're not giving yourself too good a chance of that. So just on that game, Quinny, Croatia, just in that game itself, they that penalty for me just probably killed it for them, and then the second goal so quickly.
Is very similar to Morocco. Like I was really close to, when France went 1-0 up, I was so close to tweeting at the time, that's it, game over, 1-0 France, because like Morocco and Croatia, both, when you have that tactic of keep the clean sheet to about the 60th, 70th minute, and then it is a coin toss, take your chances and play in the spaces and anything can happen. And, I personally, like, I couldn't believe the amount of backlash the penalty decision got because, like, the goalkeeper, like, for how close he gets to the player, he has to touch the ball, like, it's not, he is super close to it. So I think, like, if it's anywhere else in the pitch, it's clearly a foul, so yeah. I was quite surprised by the uproar, to be quite honest.
That's what your man Walton said in the television, wasn't it? That he has to get the ball if he comes out like that.
It's the goalkeeper's choice. He doesn't need to he doesn't need to smell Alvarez's breath. You know what I mean? He could hold back and try and block the ball or whatever, but he's going in to get the ball and he doesn't. So, what I mean? Like, if it's anywhere else, it's a foul,
Yeah,
anyway.
That's it. And I think if it was Celtic, I think we'd be shouting for a penalty for that, and I would hope that it'd be given. It's almost like something that remember when Craig Gordon had this new lease of life and he used to bolt? It was something like that, was it? I know it wasn't as far out his goal mouth, but it was something along those lines, wasn't it?
It was like when you used to just hold in triangle in Pro Ev and the goalkeeper would just run to the halfway line.
That's it. Yeah. So,
but yeah, it totally kills the game for Croatia, as you say, because Croatia go into that game with Juranovic, of course, as well as the midfield three of Brozovic, Modric, and Kovacic. To be like a great football team, build the game up, control the game, and then, even with our front three, none of them are like killers in the box, but they're all really capable and all really clever and all interchangeable. And as soon as you lose that chance, because then you need to go and attack the match, and on the break, Alvarez, Messi, and whoever else they've got on the pitch at the time, Alexis McAllister or Lautaro came on towards the end and whatever. It's actually a surprise as well towards the end. I seen somebody tweeting this out, but until the celebrations after the game, I didn't know Dybala was in this World Cup.
Yeah, he came off the bench, didn't he? It was good. Somebody had put out that list, Quinny. And sorry for anybody listening that we're still on World Cup chat here, but it's relevant to Juranovic. But just when we're talking about Argentina, they put out that list, and it's all these players that's been tipped to be the new Maradona. And Dybala's in the list, and a lot of people, years ago, superstar, whatever, Juventus. Is he at Roma now? Am I correct in saying that? Is it Roma under Jose Mourinho? You wouldn't know he was there, but as you say, a big part of Croatia's success so far in the World Cup up until now was that midfield three. It worked. I mean, Modric is a legend of the game. It's always a sore one to see such a great quality football player like that bow out. It will be surely a bow out at a World Cup. But they were up against a real tough test in Paredes, McAllister, and Fernandes, who looks as if he's signed a pre-contract with Liverpool. He's 21 years old, that boy. He's going to be a real top talent. But just taking a step back again, the Brazil game I've not been on since. Juranovic was absolutely outstanding in that game, up against a player who he'd already faced twice, a player who'd already get the better of him twice. But wow, I think that was the only thing I could really say about Juranovic's performance against Brazil. But were you sitting in disbelief at how good he was against Brazil, Quinny?
It wasn't so much disbelief, but it's kind of like so many players at Celtic where they've got that in them. We've seen that at different stages of different matches or whatever. Juranovic is probably one of the exceptions in terms of like the level, because we were all ranting and raving about how well he did against France and like the Nations League or whatever it was,
Absolutely.
So to see him
which people try and discredit, but we do know that it's become an important part of international football, isn't it? So
totally.
No matter whether there's a debate or how seriously do a team like France or whoever take these tournaments. I know England's another one in the Nations League. It's still a case that they're in it, and you need to perform well. And they did perform well against France. And as you say with that, that this, we knew what kind of player Juranovic has got, so probably disbelief was the wrong word, but yeah, he did well in that game, and he proved he still got it. He's got it. He's got
keep
it.
Going, man. Keep going.
That's it. Yeah.
But yeah, I think he's won plaudits like worldwide after this tournament. Because like Croatia for me, like I'm 34, I think now at this point, right? And the first World Cup memories I really have is '98 with Scotland, been in with Brazil and whatnot. And in that World Cup, it was Croatia's. That was a World Cup that I really fell in love with football with. In Croatia, that was their first World Cup, and they also finished third that year. And they had Davor Suker up front and Prozinecki and a few other guys. They ended up like playing in like the Premier League and Champions League and stuff. And so like I quite like seeing Croatia do well. As a Celtic fan, it's been a wee bit hard for a wee spell, because normally Rangers have had a few Croatian players in their team, but it's nice to have one of ours in there. And again, going for third place in this World Cup, like I think they'll be taking the match really seriously, and I'm expecting Juranovic to be taking this match really seriously. And we'll probably see a good kind of encore, as it were.
And listen, we're not knocking it, certainly. Third place in the World Cup's an achievement in itself, and I know that Joe Hart was talking the other day, and 70 odd caps for England, so he's been there, he's done it at tournaments in terms of actually participating in it. Obviously England hasn't won any tournaments since 1966, so that rubbish about coming home is just a nonsense, but
that should be a finable offence.
Joe Hart was talking about Juranovic in terms of living the dream, and he has been, and getting to the third place. If Croatia beat Morocco at the weekend, finishing third place is certainly by no means a disaster or a bad tournament. People would have had them out a long time before. So back to what we're supposed to be talking about, Quinny, with Celtic in terms of this, because that's what we're leading on to with Jura. It surely has increased his market value. I wouldn't say tenfold, but Celtic can certainly add a few extra pounds. That's £1 million onto his price tag, whatever it is, because he's proven, as you touched on, against France he can do it. Once again against Brazil. And his stock is rising dramatically. Didn't have the greatest of Champions League campaigns. That was throughout the whole Celtic side. But he's certainly shown in this campaign that he can do it. And it's no wonder that teams, Atletico Madrid, Manchester United, Barcelona, Torino now, are all showing interest in him.
Well, Torino, are, I was reading that article this morning because it does look a wee bit, wide
it's a
of the
strange
mark.
one. It's a strange one because they're well out the ballpark. The figure what I read this morning was £8 million. There's absolutely no chance Celtic are going to take £8 million for Juranovic.
Now, to put this in a bit of perspective for anyone, so Torino had a defender by the name of Bremer who got sold for big money to Juventus. And then in the summer they were desperately going out to try and replace him. And they were linked to a guy that plays for Salzburg called Omar Solé. Now, this guy is usually seen as being he could walk into the France team over the next 4 or 5 years. And Torino, again, they were linked with Solé for £3 million or something. People that I know that are kind of quite, let's say, invested in who's playing for Salzburg, etc., couldn't believe that they were going to sell him for £3 million. It was mental. I don't know if it was this Di Marzio guy that was also reporting it, because it is Torino and whatever. So I don't know if there's any kind of deja vu in that respect as well. But I'm not reading too much into the Torino thing as being anything concrete, because Solé is still at Salzburg. So the thing never happened. And then the reports later came out saying that it was never really even that close. It was just a bit of a murmur. So the Torino one, there's a few clubs, if you're in all these kind of niche transfer speculation rumor mills, there's a few clubs that come up that maybe there's some smoke. Torino in the summer ended up buying a guy called Per Schurz, who is from Ajax. So they've kind of spent a bit of their Bremer money necessarily. So I don't know if, because Torino are not that big at the moment. They're not doing overly amazing, So I'm not too sure if that's got much legs to it. So I wouldn't read too much into that report necessarily. But I agree with you that the valuation of this tournament for him has went up, So I think he'll have his sights set higher than Torino. And I think the club will have their sights set higher than £5 million with a loan obligation to buy. It was the kind of stuff I was reading in that Di Marzio report, which just sounds too messy. I don't think we want a messy deal. We want a nice, clean. He's just finished fourth place in the World Cup. He's one of the defenders of the tournament, clearly, for good reason. It's not a flash in the pan kind of thing.
No,
and we want a ticket for him.
That's it. No, absolutely. The foundations to move Juranovic out the door probably couldn't have been set any better than this, and it's why that when the attraction first appeared in the summer, Quinny, and it was Atletico and Manchester United that were the two parties interested. As far as we know, again, we're only basing this off newspaper chats and whatever else. At that point, it was reported in Croatia that Juranovic was happy at Celtic. It was always right that Celtic got to the point where he played in the Champions League. He's had that, and then got this World Cup, because we all knew that in terms of market value, in terms of stock, that it was surely only going to rise. And getting to the semi-final of the World Cup, possibility of being the third place team in the World Cup, has done that. To ask you, what price tag do you think is fair to put in Josip Juranovic just now? Is 20 million fair?
I think 20 million, including any potential add-ons and whatnot, is probably what the club are after. It might be something.
Do you think there'll be too much add-ons with his age at 27? Because a lot of people probably might think of this deal as, his big money move, whatever else. Or do you think there's potential for him to go to? I mean, what I read today is that he supposedly is interested in going to Serie A. Nothing about Torino, just Serie A. So that obviously puts your AC Milan, Juventus, Inters, whatnot into the mix. Do you think there's a potential to maybe go to, a league like Serie A or whatnot, and then English football or something? Do you think there's a possibility for that? Because he seems to maybe be one of these guys just now who wants to try different leagues, different cultures, and move on, and maybe going, to Serie A for a year, having been at Celtic for 18 months, just might suit him. Do you think there's a possibility in that? And that's why you're maybe saying that the add-on might be there?
Yeah, totally. And especially if it isn't like a top of the food chain Serie A team, because they will probably think, oh, well, if he's good for us, maybe one of the bigger boys will pay us a bit more than what we paid for him. Like Bremer, going from Torino to Juventus. Bremer's not like a spring chicken. He's like 26, 27 or something. I forget his age, but maybe he's 24. But he's not like an 18-year-old, is my point, So that does happen quite a lot. There's been a good amount of success of Scottish youth players moving to Italy and hitting the ground running. So Italian clubs maybe feel a bit more confident in that transition. But with players like Juranovic, the add-ons typically could be stuff like appearances that they make, and like if they do go on and maybe like qualify for Europe or win a title, or depending on what the stature of the club is that we're talking about. It's not always necessarily a sell-on fee, because again, with the ages that maybe some clubs will want to reserve a bit of fee against, like, well, maybe we don't actually keep them for longer than a season or two for whatever reason, any maybe caution to the wind or any risk assessment they're doing on their end. So I do think 20 million all told is something that's definitely achievable, but I do think it would be in bits and bobs.
Yeah, no, and that's probably part of modern football just now, isn't it? That it'll come in bits and bobs. If a team signs somebody for 80 million or whatever else, I know, given that as an upfront payment, that'll be over the course of maybe 2 or 3 years. But the good thing is that with it likely that Juranovic goes, whether it's in January or whether it's in the summer, we've got a replacement in, which is a real positive. And just in terms of Juranovic, congratulations to him. I know probably doesn't mean much at this point in time, but I think it's a great achievement. Our league gets knocked a lot. There's obviously 2 players in that Croatia squad that play in Scottish football, Juranovic and one other, and well done to them, because it's a great achievement for a country who has a smaller population in Scotland to get that far. It shows what can be done. So
totally
great news for Celtic. And again, I think to finish on this point, we keep saying this on here, Quinny, but it really is important. We can talk about all these teams that are linked with him and whatnot. He is still contracted to Celtic until 2026. He is there for another 3.5 years. So any deal that happens, Celtic's in full control here, and that is a great position to be in. We keep banging on about it, but I think that means everything compared to the situation we found ourselves in last summer with Edwards and Ayers. We've got Juranovic here. We know his stock's risen. It's not as if he's out of contract next summer. He's there for a long time. So Celtic meet the call on this, which I think is a great position to be in.
Totally. And let the bidding commence.
let the bidding commence. You're right. Let the bidding commence, because again, that can push up market value if you've got a couple of teams interested in him.
Yeah,
it'll be like that still game with the car and Calibra lighter and whatever else. So, let the bidding commence on him, absolutely. Over to our new recruit, Alistair Johnston. Celts are here. Got a chance to speak to Alistair Johnston. If you've not checked it out, the full presser is up on our YouTube. There's clips also. There, Aaron went along. I was at the presser too, representing the alternative view. And Quinny, what a nice guy. The video with Peter Galindo, who had spoken to after the presser with Alistair on Monday. Peter had says to me, he's one of these guys who will come in. If he's only got 15 minutes, he'll sit for an hour. And he really wasn't kidding. It was just a case of asking him a question, sit back, enjoy, and listen to what he wants to talk about. There was just a real refreshing sense to his game, his ambition here at Celtic, and just really, really good to hear. Did you manage to catch much of his chat on Monday?
Yeah, I loved it. I put a comment somewhere, I can't remember where it was, but I love how halfway through the interview, it just breaks into a critique of Kieran Tierney and Premier League fullbacks and stuff like that, talking about Trent and stuff like that. I'm like, is this guy a manager or playing? So yeah, he totally loves it. And that guy you interviewed was talking about how when he finishes with football, he would not be surprised at all if he works in the media, and that's ripping out of him. He absolutely loves the engagement. He loves football, and you could tell that with the initial unveiling interview. The one he done in his wee hotel room with the club, where he was just immersed in it straight away. And that's a recurring theme, of other players that are at the team as well that we've not had for a while. And when you do have at a team like ours, it's worth more than money in some cases. Henrik Larsson is the archangel of that, the guy that just gets the team, and it's all about the football and it's all about the team. Yeah, and just gets it. And it's not about let's run away to England or whatever, So the more guys that come in like that, the better, because that mentality, as I say, you can't buy that.
No, you can, and that's been everything about Ange Postecoglou since he arrived last summer. As I always remember, and I think Neil Lennon was spot on when he said it. It was in those darkest days of COVID, which will be 2 years ago now, and he spoke about culture at the club having to change, and he kind of backtracked on it a bit. But I think he really hit the nail on the head with something in that, and the culture at the club did need to change. But we know that there was players that wanted out then, and what else. And you can't have that. You want harmony in the dressing room. We know that there's two at this point in time. Juranovic is one of them that it's looking likely that will leave. Giakoumakis is the other. But the culture that Ange has created and the mould of it is absolutely perfect. And you see that when Johnson's came in and he's talking about, Callum McGregor having that chat with him, and then Juranovic once again seeking him out after Croatia thumped Canada 4-1, which is just something Juranovic doesn't need to do, but he goes out his way to do it. Well, he could have been in, jumping about with his teammates in the dressing room. Totally. And again, that just says everything about the type of individuals and characters that Ange has brought to Celtic, doesn't it?
Yeah, completely. Like the thing with Juranovic as well, for like it now looks like quite a short stay he's had with us. Like he's had number 88 on his back. That's the kind of guy that we brought in. Like he's somebody that again is just gets football, just wants to be the best version of himself he can be, and understands like how big playing for us is, and obviously like he's benefited by having a good national team around him as well, and he's got himself into that squad and all the rest of it. But yeah, that that type of person that is also a very good footballer and also buys into the manager, buys into the system. Like that's the real difference when it gets to the fine margins in football as we talk about.
And that's it, and it's he keeps going on about this is Ange with not just signing the best players, you want to sign the best person. And again, it looks as if he's did that with this boy here, that you've got somebody who's just got this great belief in what he's coming to and what he wants to achieve from it. And again, great to hear that he, when asked about how quickly after speaking to the manager, he decided, what he got to Celtic, and he said almost instantly. And again, it's great to know that your manager has that power, that when anybody speaks to him over the phone or Zoom or whatever, it's just a instant click. Yep, okay, I want to go to Celtic, get the deal done. But which again, as you say, Quinny, Celtic are constrained by lots of things, money and whatnot. But if you have a top manager in place, a great culture at the club, a philosophy that people are buying into, it's a good place to play your football, I think, at this point in time.
Completely. And I think we're also kind of being much smarter as well in understanding who is going to be the most excited about coming to us as well. Because if you think about it, for the most part, like sometimes when we've been going in for players, and particularly if you think about some of the ones like in the kind of the English kind of market or maybe kind of around Scandinavia or whatever, we're not always like the first team to come in. And sometimes like money is a big difference. I was actually reading an article before coming on this morning talking about like the truth of the John McGinn deal or whatever, and I didn't get to read it fully. It was so many adverts stripped through it. But basically, one of the things that I noticed in it was that apparently us in Villa, we had the exact same wages on the table, and they did throw obviously tons of bonuses and mega Premier League money and whatever at it as well, all the rest of it, whatever. But I don't think there's too many occasions where we are going in and like, we've been linked to guys like Tony and those kind of guys that emerged through the Championship and lower end of England. We always get linked to one or two of them a year, and those guys have got the option quite often of like 25k a week at us or 50k a week at bloody Brighton or Blackburn or whatever, and when you go after players like that, you will be disappointed sometimes. But when we are going to Japan, we are going to Argentina, we're going to, even Juranovic, we're picking him up from Poland, You go to these places and it's like, Celtic's the biggest thing coming, and it's really throwing our weight around in the right way. And then getting the pick of the litter and like the best people like we're talking about on top of that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about being able to challenge, Champions League. It was their first return to the competition in 5 years. There's multiple reasons for that. Partly it's been due to that recruitment structure. You need to try and compete with some of the money that's in modern football just now. You need to be smart, which is something I don't think Celtic's been for too long. Is working the market well, bringing in players who are unknown quantities. We did it 10 years previous under Neil Lennon, when you're bringing in guys like Wanyama, even Van Dijk from Groningen, who's in a kind of similar mould to what you're saying there, Quinny, from a team that Celtic's the next big thing. And then we diverted back to even, under Brendan Rodgers, going and buying guys like Gamboa and De Vries, we very much narrowed the market. And it's been great that we've opened it up. And again, I put over to Johnston when I was having my questions to him, asking about that MLS breakthrough, and it was a really good answer, because it was you that had said last week about getting that chance if you're a young kid coming through because of the relegation zone. And he said, that is probably the reason why. And he said that, if you don't take the path that people possibly think you need to take in football, that you come through a academy system and you go into the first team. He said that he hopes that he can be an inspiration to others, which again, just nice to hear, because football, it can be very easy for people in football just to be focused on themselves and that's it. But Johnson has this outlook and an idea of what he wants to do. So I think from his presser, if he can play as well as he talks, we've got ourselves a real top player.
Yeah, I did catch the relegation chat from him. I think maybe the thing I seen had sliced out like the actual questions. It was just all his answers, perhaps. But I did catch that chat as well. So yeah, that was nice to hear as well. But yeah, I think even because with the amount of Japanese players we've been bringing through, like we've spoke about before, but Alistair Johnston wants to be an inspiration to Canadians and people in MLS and all the rest of it, right? But we also want him to be a success story. So next time we go back to America and we are getting, like, again, Alistair Johnston is rated when we signed him as the best right back in MLS. My opinion slightly differs, but I think he's definitely in the top two. But next time we go back, because MLS is tons of talent in lots of different positions, whether it's a goalkeeper or a striker, whatever it is we're looking for next. If they see that he can move here, have a nice lifestyle, play European football, and then move their career on, then we can be going back and getting some amazing targets.
Yeah, absolutely. And you were the guy that shouted out that at the World Cup they were outside the top 5 leagues in Europe. Yeah. They'd sent the most players to the competition, which says a lot about it. It's never going to be the sport in America. We know that the football, as they call it, NFL, is always going to be dominant, as well as the baseball and whatever else. But it is growing, and you can see that. And again, that's probably only going to build towards the World Cup over there in the next 4 years, 2026.
The only little extra thing I'd throw in about MLS for anyone listening that might care, but from next season onwards, every single MLS match is on Apple TV. So if you have Apple TV, you can watch literally every game. The now Sky and a few other places have it, and it's quite hard to watch. Time zones are obviously difficult in the UK, but I'm sure they'll be laying on all sorts of like match of the day stuff and blah blah and whatever. And like I've always said, like MLS is like harmless fun football. Like really, like don't take it too seriously. It's tons of fun. Like and then some good players come out of it.
It's a usual Sunday night watch for my old man. He likes all the MLS. It's something I always used to like coming in and watching. Still does, I think. But that's something that Martin O'Neill was talking about. He liked the NFL. He was talking about in his book. It's a wee bit of American sport chat in there. But inverted fullback role as well, something I really wanted to ask Johnston about, and I got a cracking answer off him because we know that he's played wing back, we know he's played right back, we know he's played at the right centre half and a back three, and I wanted to ask him, is this something that you're suited to? And again, really interesting, Quinny, to hear him say, apart out with Celtic and Manchester City, there's no real other teams that play this style of football. So even again, that's been noticed by teams around the world. And again, if you're a fullback, you're rubbing your hands at that because you're thinking, I don't really want to be stuck trying to defend against a winger. I want to be in that mix beside the centre midfielder, creating chances for our team and getting more of a role in the team. So that's something, again, I think, especially that position, it's a really attractive prospect.
Big time, yeah. And again, like you do get that real sense from him that the football part of the team is a huge factor for him as well, and guys that have that ambition to, in the best possible way, become better for being at Celtic. It's always exciting to see. And for a new signing, like, I've said before on the show, and I'll say it again, but like, I don't think it's nailed on. He's going to like just put Ralston back to the bench. Like Ralston is probably going to be in for Aberdeen. And Ralston, arguably, before the World Cup, to some Celtic fans, was maybe the better right back this year, in spells, kind of thing. So it's a great competition to have in that spot, but very interested to see Ralston's performances elevate, perhaps.
Actually, the zone, you must have been looking at my notes, because that's exactly the next thing I was going to ask you, so that's perfect, mate. Well done. Tony Ralston. Let's talk about Tony Ralston, because you're absolutely right. he's going to play at Pittodrie on Saturday. We know that's a given because Juranovic is going to be in Qatar still. So bit of a distance to come. Even if he wasn't, I don't think he'd have been playing this game. And Johnston can't play until the turn of the year, so it's going to be Ralston at right back, no doubt about it. Unless there's any kind of late injury or whatnot, you probably need to turn to then Stephen Bells to play right back for you. But it's deadly likely to be Ralston. What happens here? Because I'm looking at the fixtures right in front of me here. When they've got Aberdeen away, but then get Livingston at home to St Johnstone, away to Easter Road, then it's Ibrox. When do you think the manager will reintroduce Juranovic, or do you just keep him as an asset, wrap him in cotton wool and leave him on the shelf? Because to me, at this point in time, I don't think Nelson's going to really have a stinker in any of those games. I hope he's not. He's more than capable of playing all those games. I think he scored at Easter Road, I think, last season. Yep. He's played at Ibrox before. No reason why Ralston can't keep his place in this team for the time being. Or do you think that because of how much the league means, this is a tough schedule of games, that he will reintroduce Juranovic back in? Because, again, playing that amount of games in such a short space of time is tough on any player. And we know the manager likes rotation. And I imagine, like, at left back, you'll see Bernaby maybe come in for the Livingston or St Johnstone game or whatnot.
Perhaps, yeah.
What do you think? Is it worth the risk to bring him back into the team? I would say it is.
I think it depends on who the club is that's going to come and get him, because some European clubs are still on winter break until like beginning of January, mid-January, end of January. Some of them, like Italy and Turkey, come back along with Belgium the same time that we do. But anyway, so it depends on where he's going. And I think, like, if the team he's going to are maybe still on some sort of break, we maybe play him against Hibs and Rangers, and maybe, I don't know. But I would not be surprised at all if, because the third place playoff is the same day as us playing Aberdeen, I'm sure. So, or is it the day after? It's round. I'm sure it's the same day. They're both this Saturday, isn't it? I'm sure the third place playoff is the same day as us playing Aberdeen, but it's at 3:00 and we're at 12:30. So he's probably going to have then like a week off, maybe. I don't know. Some of the guys have came back after 3 or 4 days. So you then definitely write off Livingston and St Johnstone, and then it's maybe Hibs. So if he is going to come back in, I don't think it can be much earlier than Hibs.
And looking at that game, game before going to Ibrox, it's always tough. Easter Road, so if you bring him back in for that, it's just you'd much prefer, I think, Quinny, to be looking at one of those games at Celtic Park to bring him back in for. But as you say, it's a week between Aberdeen and St Johnstone at Celtic Park, so it would likely to be Hibs. So you're hoping that Ralston comes through injury free. Again, do you think Ange would be tempted at all to throw Johnson right in for his debut at Ibrox?
Well, some Celtic players have had the baptism of fire quite a few times in the fullback position, no less. So,
did Badr El Kadori make his debut at Ibrox?
I think he did.
That was my first ever game at Ibrox, by the way.
Oh, was it?
It was, and he scored. Him and Gary Hooper. I'll never forget. I mean, we lost on the day. We went on to win the league that season, so that's all right. But yeah, my first game at Ibrox. So it's a real great one. Yeah. If anybody asks, people will go, "Oh, Larson or Sutton, like who scored?" Or even majority of people kind of my first game at Ibrox would have been like 2016 when we won 2-1 there. And then Bailey scored that rocket for the corner. But my first game at Ibrox was in 2011, and Badr El Kadori scored. So there's one for you. So listen, if Alistair Johnston pops up with a goal like that, same goalkeeper.
He would be all about it, man. He'll be straight away, man. He's going to be up for it. So
yep.
I definitely wouldn't rule that out. But I think the manager will probably have made a decision on that if he thinks that Johnston is going to be able to get chucked in for that. But again, I do think wherever Juranovic is going to go, play a part in that. Because if it is Italy, like I said, Italy come back when we come back. So if somebody in Italy's buying them, they're wanting them, So it'll be fee agreed, get the deal done, get on a plane, pack your bags. Kind of idea. It won't be protracted. Whereas if it is like Germany or anywhere like that, then maybe it might trickle out for a week or two, and then we might get a game or two out of them. Then we might get having World Cup semi-finalist Josip Juranovic at right back for one more Old Firm. That could be fun,
Easy with that, Tim. Quinny, come on. Easy with that.
Of course. Sorry, I think semi-finalist, but of course, sorry.
One more derby game at Ibrox for Josip Juranovic. But
I'm sorry.
No, you're right, and I think it's almost nice too to kind of give players that swan song type thing. I mean, I'd much rather he goes for a big fee and he's injury free when he goes for it than coming in and maybe picking something up. But I think it could be quite nice to kind of, throw their boots into the crowd. This Malarkey, the wave, and that's it, cheerio type thing.
You can take a juicy red card as well at the end, and it doesn't matter.
Steady out. That would probably carry over to it. I'm saying that Bernaby's never, so you never know. But yeah, it's one to consider because it's a bit, as I say, it's going to be a grueling period of games. It's 3 really tough away games. It kicks off on Saturday with a visit to Pittodrie. Easter Road's never easy. Then you're going to Ibrox, so you get 2 games at Celtic Park wedged in there. I think if Johnston was allowed to play, you'd be seeing him at this point in time rotate, probably Livingston or St Johnstone getting some minutes, but he's not. But again, the manager might look at that Derby game, and I know we're talking about this 2 weeks in advance, but he might be looking at and thinking, Quinny, just off the back of World Cup, he's as fit as a fiddle. He's been in here training for 2-3 weeks now. I can throw him in and he'll be absolutely fine. So it's not as if it's like a Carl Starfelt. He's just arriving in one training session at Lennoxtown and then you go, son. It's definitely not that. So
and probably will want to. I don't think he might not hold much sentiment the same way that I'm talking about now. He might just want to move forwards, kind of idea, and good luck to JJ and see you later. That might be the manager's attitude, and I understand that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So. I think Ange's got far too much credit in the bank not to believe in whatever he does. So absolutely fine. Let's talk about another exit, and this has been the kind of the major Celtic news story probably for the past couple of days, which seems a bit odd. It's been quite quiet, Quinny. The Portugal camp, no media coverage around it. Celtic wanted to keep it quiet. The game against Rennes was like a kickabout in Kelvin Grove Park. I mean, it really looked like a public park they were playing in. But just to touch on that, I'm not looking at the result at all because it's a friendly game, a lot of rotation, blah, blah. But McGregor returns to the side. I want to talk about him before we finish, but just in terms of Matt O'Reilly, he'll probably move a wee bit more advanced. I don't think it was any coincidence that O'Reilly pops up with 2 goals at the weekend and two good goals. I don't know if you caught them, but really good goals.
Yeah, I seen them both well taken strikes from distance. Good O'Reilly strikes, and very much looking forward to seeing O'Reilly get back into that more. The position he really excelled at the beginning of the season, that attacking, just playing off the striker kind of idea. I don't know what transfer story you're going to take me to there. I thought you were going to say Giacomakis.
I was going to take you to Scott Robertson because that's been the one yesterday, today that there's been a lot of chat about, and today because Hibs and Rangers are back in action in the league. That's been kind of the main stuff in the news today. So I'm sure there'll be a wee bit more around Celtic tomorrow when this podcast actually comes out. Probably will be a wee bit more out there, but just in terms of Scott Robertson, he is a cert to now leave the club. It's been made clear from what's been reported that Celtic won't renew his contract in May. It's out of contract May 2023, and his comments quite interesting, Quinny. I'll just read a couple of them here.
Sure.
I'm really looking forward to getting a new team, facing a fresh challenge and playing regularly. The manager will have a meeting with me on Thursday to tell me what's been decided, but I'm already aware of the situation. And just kind of following on to that, we'd been talking about going to Sydney and whatever else. I only played against Sydney for about 15 minutes, and I don't have any minutes for the first team this season. So I had the gut feeling my time at the club was nearing an end. Now there's so much to look forward to as a new chapter in my career is about to begin, and I'm going to realise that. He's only 21. He's had loan spells at Gillingham, Doncaster, and most recently Crewe, which was of course ended early this year, mid-February time, I think, due to injury. It's another Celtic Academy graduate lost, but I don't think it's going to be a great loss to the squad because ever since making his debut December 2019, he's just not been able to make an impression at all in either Neil Lennon or Ange Postecoglou. And again, it's somebody you're getting out the club who's on a wage that you can probably invest money in. But just in terms of Scott Robertson, it's one that you're probably looking at, and he's had that first team chance. It's not happened for him. And it's just a case, I think, now Quinny's trying to get him the best deal to get out of there. And if it's a cup price one in January, I think that'd be probably better for him to try and get game time, because he's just not going to get it at Celtic.
Yeah. And by all accounts, it sounds like it's between Scott Brown and Fleetwood picking up.
Yep.
And St Mirren. Yeah, they were the two teams that have been hotly linked with him. I would like to see him go and play at Fleetwood, because I don't think they're too far away. I've not looked at the League One table, but I don't think they're far away from imagining getting into the Championship, with playoffs and whatnot, So, it would be nice to see him go on a wee adventure. And if we're thinking for a Celtic-centric kind of reason, like if he gets promoted and does pretty well, maybe somebody spends a couple of million on him. Maybe we've got a wee fee tied on somewhere. So yeah, I'd like to think that's a good move. Maybe helps Bruni out as well in his managerial debut, as it were. And again, it's another one of these things as well. We're talking about pathways of players coming in, but equally pathways of players that going out is something to consider as well. Like we talk about some of the biggest clubs in the world and how they like buy the best talent around the world and then farm them out on loan and sell them to manipulate FFP or whatever. But we still should have like a really prominent academy that brings through players of a caliber, and they need to see that if they do stay around the first team and bide their chances, and then maybe ultimately the chance doesn't come, that they aren't discarded, and then left by the wayside, or they're not looked after in the exit door kind of situation. Mm-hmm. So you want to see him go somewhere where he's going to be successful and kick on, because then that's in another way. It's something that other people can look at and go, well, if that's the worst case scenario, then taking my youth career at Celtic is, it's not so bad kind of idea.
Yeah, making the debut at 18 3 years ago. So it's one to look at, because it's 21. It's plenty of football left in his career, and again, kind of looking at him, as I say, those three clubs that I've mentioned. Callum McGregor, it was a pretty similar route he did, going down to Notts County, then coming back up, and then that was about the time at 21 that he kind of broke into the Celtic team. I don't know if do you think that was maybe ever in the plans for Robertson with that? Because surely Quinny, there's a point with a footballer like that even though I'm saying there's plenty of time to go at 21 for since coming back from Crewe, very little football, and that's not going to help his development at all, just sitting on the bench, especially if he's not part of the plans. But do you think that having farmed him out to some of those clubs down south, that there was maybe an idea, whether probably for Neil Lennon and maybe later Leange, that they could have got a tune out of him?
I think, like for any manager, you're always going to consider the academy players that the club holds when you come in. Can you get something out of them? I think if Scott Robertson had came through when Ronnie Dyler was a manager, he'd have probably got minutes and got more of a chance, because the club's attitude would have been, play him if he works, and if it doesn't work, we'll buy somebody else. That was the kind of way it was kind of going at the time. Tierney made it, McGregor made it, and then, we kind of danced around the transfer market with lots of fails really and whatever else. But Ange has got a very deliberate system, and he'll try and use all the players that are here at his disposal, but he won't settle for it might work, with playing style and that kind of thing. And if this guy just doesn't fit, it's not anything bad on him. It's just maybe wrong place, wrong time.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of midfielders in front of him at this point in time. Your Rio Hatatis, O'Reilly, who we've spoken about. O'Reilly, who's only a year older than Robertson. So, but with that in mind, right place, right time, all that stuff. It's just not been for him. I think just in terms of looking out for Scott Robertson, I would say a move down to Fleetwood probably going to suit him best, Quinny, just because he's experienced in that league. He's gone down there with somebody that he knows, and he's old Celtic captain in Scott Brown. And it would be a nice story to see that kind of happen, develop him, and try and bring in some success. I don't know if saying that Scottish football is going to be the right thing for Scott Robertson, although St Mirren, this season have been fairly decent. They're obviously the only team that have beaten us in the league so far. That they've got a lot of players there who were at the World Cup, the Australian contingent that they've got. So they've been doing decent things. Stephen Robinson's got a decent track record in terms of Scottish football and young players, but it's not the worst two clubs to be linked with. But I think just looking at where he's been so far, Fleetwood I think would be the best option. And if they were to come in with a couple of $100,000 cut price offer for Robertson, I don't know what you'd maybe be valuing Robertson at, maybe 300, 400 grand. If they come in with 200 grand or whatever else, I would just take the money, because he's going to go, and just let the boy go and play football now.
That's it. And these divisions, the Championship, League One, League Two, like the amount of games they play in the league, the actual league itself is like 40 odds or something. They then have League Cup, FA Cup, and then that Johnston's Paint Cup or whatever we're calling it these days. So, like, if you're a prominent,
what is that called now? Papa John's, I think.
Is it Papa John's
Cup? I think it's Papa John's.
So whatever that is. So, like, if you could be a main player in one of these teams, then you can get a lot of time on the pitch. And for players like this, like, that's a great place to go to, I would say.
Absolutely. So good luck to Scott Robertson. It's one that likely will happen. Again, midfielder Ideguchi, not seem to have worked out for him too, Quinny. I think the story was actually last Thursday night. It might have broke around Yusuke. I don't think there's a great amount of surprise in it. Again, we're talking about right time, right place, right time. Bad injury against Alloa. And whether they would have kicked on from that point, we don't know. But that was a big setback for him, and he's not recovered from it at all. And he's not played a minute of competitive football for Celtic this season either.
Yeah, and it's I'm just glad that the news has came out and it's been quite swift, if you know what I mean. Because again, like with we're forever asking about some of these fringe players. What's their future? Does the manager have them in this reckoning at all? What's the club's thoughts behind them? And as swift as we've been with bringing in Kobayashi and Johnson, we're equally now being as like direct as like I've got on some sort of authority via Twitter and whatever that McCarthy's going to be let go for nothing. Of course, we're sending Ideguchi back to Japan somehow in some sort of deal, and also we're talking about Robertson. So we're also like at the point now where it's like time's up for these guys, and they're getting moved swiftly out. And I don't think we've been as clinical in that action in the past as we're now showing to be, which is good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's best for both parties that you're clinical in that action. That if it's not going to happen, do what's best for them and for you as a club, because you're just spending money that you don't really need to. But all the best to him. But while we're on midfielders, Celtic captain Callum McGregor's going to return. That I mentioned earlier when we were having that wee chat around O'Reilly and goals. That it was no surprise that playing that more advanced role that O'Reilly back in the score sheet. Do you throw Callum McGregor in on Saturday from the off? My opinion in this, Quinny, is you do. He's your captain. Pittodrie is one of the toughest places to go in the league. I think if Ange's asking him if he's ready to go, McGregor's saying yes. He's played last week. He's got minutes under his belt. He should be thrown right back into this game.
Yeah, I think so too. Like, I think his injury, like it was a 4 to 6 week injury, was the kind of the typical return time for, I forget the exact thing that he done, and the 6 week mark fell just as we came into the break, so he has been this whole World Cup training and getting back up to speed and all the rest of it. The manager was on record as saying that he was like impressed with his recovery even before the World Cup. Yep. He started the match against Rennes. And what he activates for the other midfielders, like we spoke about, is like what we really need in this team. As much as he becomes back, we get the best O'Reilly back on the pitch, and then hopefully with McGregor and then the best version of O'Reilly, we can get the most out of Rio that we're maybe not getting as well. So
and even your forward players, Quinny, because I think there's a lot to be said about playing that pivot role and how quickly the ball comes from your central defenders into that area and then gets to the forward players. And I think that transition is something we maybe struggled a bit latterly in the Champions League with, although I think O'Reilly did pretty well deputising for McGregor in that role. I think that's a big part of our game that you really need to get right, and he does it so well.
Yeah, for sure. So I think the manager's shown already as well. He will put the best players back in when he wants to put them back in. We've seen that across the season with various players. And alongside McGregor, like equally, I think like Carter Vickers will go straight back in as well. For the team, and I think that's the way the manager does get into that vein of play the best guys all the time. And I think this stretch that we're on, maybe guys like Bernabei and Moy come in and out for maybe some of the midweeks and stuff, but by and large, I think he will run at that Rangers game, get the best guys up to the best shapes possible,
And I still think there will be that wee bit of rotation that you're talking about there, Quinny, especially looking at like Livingston and St Johnstone at Celtic Park, and even latterly Hibs, with the 5 subs, you've got guys like Maeda, Moy, and whoever else that can come off the bench. Turnbull's another one who'll be wanting to get minutes. And for this game against Aberdeen, I just think it's too important not to play Callum McGregor if he's able for selection. And people will say O'Reilly's did well. I've already said that. But it means that if you're doing that, you're then putting Aaron Moy back in there. who is just returned after the World Cup. Or you're putting Turnbull back in there, probably the more likely option, but I just think the balance is so much better when McGregor's in there, and if he's ready and available, you play your captain. I always say that in any football team, you play your captain if he's fit and available. And again, looking at Aberdeen this season, they've only lost one game at home in the league, and that was back in early August. Since I think that was against Motherwell. Since then, they've beaten Livingston 5-0 at home. These are all games at Pittodrie. Livingston 5-0, Kilmarnock 4-1, 2-0 Hearts, 4-1 Hibs, 1-0 Dundee United. So they've been pretty decent at home this season. So this isn't going to be an easy game, and that's why you play your best players, and Callum McGregor's certainly one of those.
Do you want me to tell you something funny about those last four, those home games you're talking about?
Last 5, yep.
The last 5, so including Kilmarnock?
Including Kelly, 4-1.
Right, okay. So I'm not including Kilmarnock, right, because he didn't play against Kilmarnock, right? But see, the other 4 games, Aberdeen's best rated defender on every occasion was Liam Scales. So he won't be playing. So that probably bodes in our favour straight away. And not that we need to particularly worry about, how strong are Aberdeen and whatever. Like, don't get me wrong, they're great at home, should be respected. That what I'm saying is kind of contradictory to itself. But like we're Celtic, we should be going there to win it. But even Aberdeen, like straight away, like the guy that's performed best for them in all these games isn't going to be available. Alex Stewart, is that his name? Anthony Stewart. He did really good.
Number 5, he's their captain, yeah.
He did really good in the first game at Celtic Park. He really impressed, was just clearing the ball like mad and throwing everything at it. Yep. And I think that's the game that we're in for. But we've spoke about we've kind of spoke a wee bit about the defence, we spoke about the midfield, but with the forwards that we will be running up to that game with, and again, the kind of atmosphere in the team and the momentum that hopefully we're going to start with, like, I'm not worried about any of these games in particular. I think we're here to put them away.
Yep, and as you say, you get that firepower up front and so much selection. And Jota, Haksabanovic, Kyogo, Yakimakis, Maeda, Forrest as well. He's in the mix. You've got a lot of good forward players. And Lee Alabada as well. So plenty to choose from. And McGregor coming back to that really boosts that team for me. And that's a really good point, I think, on Liam Scales. He's been an important part of Aberdeen this season. Very likely that I think they'll probably try and sign him in a permanent deal. I know he's been playing centre back more up there. We've seen him play left back a lot for us. And you're going to be up for a tough test. Me and Visky's had a decent season up until now as well. He will cause problems, but the problems hopefully will be snuffed out by the centre half pair, and that's the next thing I want to talk about. We're doing all the connections today. Well, Quinny, back to you've already said that Vickers goes right back in there. We know he's played at the World Cup for the US and whatnot, and progressed to the last 16. But for me, again, he showed how important he is to Celtic. He was captain while McGregor was out. No doubt about it, he goes back in there. But the other question is, who plays left centre half? Starfelt or Moritz Jens?
I think Jens is saying so much of the right stuff. Like, he's quoted everywhere all the time, bleeding it, and that's one of two things in my head. That's either him like really pleading to get the deal done, like, guys, I'll give it all. I'm not going to sign for you and then want to run away like in a year or two. I want to be here like for my best years. That's the kind of, and that's maybe one thing that's going on. Or the second thing that's going on is maybe a wee bit of that, but he also knows, like, I'm in here. Like, the manager likes me. I'm seen as being one of the main guys in the team going forward, and I'm just embracing it and going for it. I absolutely love this place and everything else. So it's either him wanting to really push to get the deal done, and maybe it is I still have a bit of a fight to be had between a few of the players, or it is like, I know I'm the manager's guy, like, for the next 12 to 18 months in some respect, and he's happy to come out and be as confident and as open about the situation, about how much he loves the club and everything. So I'm going to go with Jens on that premise, basically.
And do you think he sticks with that throughout the next few games? Because we know it's the area of the pitch, sporting about fullbacks, midfielders, attackers, rotation, but we know that's the area of the pitch he doesn't like to tinker with. So you think if Jens go in there, that's him and Vickers solidified, or do you see Starfelt maybe popping in for a game like Livingston or St Johnstone or something like that?
I think the manager, I think if we went through the different teams that we've played against this opposition this season, you'd maybe work out like the manager might fancy playing Starfelt in one of the games over Jens. Like Jens is, in my opinion, much better when we are probably going to play against Aberdeen, who are going to bank in and try and maybe counter-attack against us. I got slated for saying they would do that against us last time, and they did, you know. That's how they played. So if they kind of go back to that kind of tactics, as it were, then Jens carrying the ball from inside our half, just over the halfway line, into the first 10, 15 yards of their half, and then playing a pass is something that I think the manager will have more confidence in than Starfelt's ability to do that. Whereas some games it will be about defending set pieces and being rugged with a big target man and doing this and doing that. You know, maybe Aberdeen has that as well, I suppose, with the big guy Duke and Miovski, as you were saying. But I think he'll fancy Jens for this game. And I think there will be games where Starfelt will come in, because we do need to sell a centre-back at some point, and they'll need to be in the shop window to some respect.
I think Starfelt's going to come back in. That's my prediction in this. Just because of how integral they were last season together, I just think that's what the manager might just go with. But I think it's a real good point what you make there, Quinny, and Jens taking that step out, which, you know, Ange certainly likes. And again, it's really, I find it really interesting, because there's a big question as to whether Moritz Jenz would have featured so much had Starfelt not been injured, and really driving towards this like second part of the season. We knew that after that injury sustained with Sweden and international, he didn't have any time in the training part in pre-season. Didn't play until, you know, towards the end of August. He came back, or mid-August, sorry. He played. He came on at Rugby Park and scored, and then up at Tannadice, and he's back out again. Goes down in the Rangers game, which you'd called. You'd thought at that point in time that he'd come back in and it would happen. He's back out then for weeks until he returns, isn't he? Comes back in for that wee period of time. I actually think I'm correct in saying he came back in for the game at the Bernabeu, didn't he? That was his first game back. He definitely played at Livingston. He played at Livingston, I'm sure, away. But then the last game at Celtic Park, Jens played at centre half because he went off with that concussion. So I suppose, as you say, that there's been a bit of rotation. Did he play at Livingston? I don't know. It was Motherwell that was the game I was going to say. David played at Motherwell. So possibly you could see what you're saying, that Jens maybe comes in for Saturday's game, and then you see Starfelt in for the Livingston game at Celtic Park. That could happen. Yeah. There's no reason why not. I think it's always just important that you've got that consistent Vickers in there, and that's all you really need to be worried about, I think, in just in terms of that. Any other shocks on the team sheet you think you'll see? What do you think at this point in time as Celtic's strongest front three?
I think the strongest front three is Jota, Kyogo and Haksabanovic. But looking at the Rennes team and knowing the kind of makeup of the forwards that we have, we started Rennes with Jota, Kyogo and Abada. Jota, as we know, on the left is going to want to cut in, and Abada, as we know, hugs the line when he's on the ball, and if he isn't, he's really good for getting in for a poacher's goal or whatever.
He's always good for a goal with Abada.
So I think that's the front three that starts against Aberdeen. I don't think he'll start Haxa and Jota, but I really want him to. But I don't think he will. But and I think Haxa is in the best front three. But I think for this game, you'll want a wide outlet. You'll want Abada to run the line when he's on the ball, and you want Jota to be coming inside. But I could be wrong. But I think that's the only maybe shock, because I think most people would expect him to pick Haksabanovic with the form he's in and Jota. I really do hope he does, and I hope I'm wrong. But when I seen that lineup and knowing like what I've just laid out there, I think that will be the mould, and what we'll see throughout the game is Haksabanovic come on for Jota, Giakoumakis for Kyogo, and Forrest for Abada, and then that's very much just like for like across. I think that's the way the game plan will go.
Yep, and again with Abada, you've already mentioned Scales being out the team. I think Aberdeen's going to be playing a back three this season, and whether that will change, we know Scales in the team, but that'd be his opponent to begin up against, which again you'd be quite happy. But with that Abada going up against him, there's a real good point in that. I think what you like, Quinny, is what I like in this Celtic team, is that when you play Haksabanovic and Jota, Maeda also comes into this conversation, is the flexibility that you get. They can switch in games, and that's something that the manager certainly likes. We can see that. Whereas Abada is certainly just, he's a right winger and that's it. and we've seen him play through the middle. But in terms of that, he's not. You're not going to see that interchange during the game that Jota will go over to the right hand side and Abada go to the left. It won't happen. Whereas I think playing Haksabanovic gives you that flexibility a lot more. But as you say,
I think at Celtic Park he's more likely to play Jota and Haxa together. You know, when you've got the space and they can both cut in, even if they're on the right and the left. You know.
Yep. But I think there's probably a good point in what you say there, that looking at the Rennes team, even though, as we said earlier, we won't look too much into the result, which we're not, the start lineup might be an indication of what he fancied going with the following week at Celtic Park. Sorry, I think he means Pittodrie, Celtic Park Wednesday, and I'm that excited to get back. I'm skipping days forward, even though it's probably going to be absolutely Baltic. God only knows what that's going to be like.
Worst away game at the worst time, man.
Well, listen, I'll enjoy it all the same.
Christmas Wonderland.
I'm looking forward to that's it. Hopefully there's no more snow, but looking forward to getting back up there.
Travel safe, everyone.
I will do. Yep. It's been a place that, you know, and Angie's time at Celtic been pretty special, actually. You probably could say, just in terms of getting that first away win up there.
Yeah.
Jota's winner. And in the game in February, became a bit of a sticky patch for us, if you remember right. We were a bit, just wasn't happening. And we get the 3-2 win, showed great character to bounce back after. But we let go a 2-0 lead. So, listen, looking forward to the game. Great to have football back. We'll be here next week to everybody talking about the game away to Aberdeen and the game at home to Livingston. We'll be back next Thursday previewing St Johnstone. So much football, so much Celtic. Fantastic. Quinny, as always, a pleasure to have you on, mate. Thanks to all our listeners as we're here to cover a busy festive period for Celtic. Hopefully, it'll be Christmas come early. Listen, I know our rivals have got a new manager in, but wouldn't it just be fantastic if we just took an extra wee step and extended the lead at the top of the table? That would really be something. Thanks to all our listeners. Like the video. If you haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel. We will catch you next week. Quinny, thanks for joining me in the Celtic Here pod.